Hey, good afternoon. Good Thursday afternoon. It is 1:23. I need to really make a time schedule for jumping on to doing these Facebook Lives, but I told you last week that I'm going to try and start on Thursdays. So if we haven't met, if you don't know me, my name's Megan, and I like to hop on here and tell you a little bit about what's going on with some of my health coaching, but more with my teenage, like life coaching, goal coaching, confidence, self-esteem, things like that. So today I'm actually going to put everything together for you. So I'm really excited that you're here to watch. We're going to talk about ADD, ADHD, and nutrition in your kids and your teenagers, and also in you. So I've talked before on here, if you like scroll way back, a while back I did a sugar talk, and I talked about how your body processes sugar, how that contributes to your energy, just overall, like your overall energy, your diet, weight loss, your sleep at night and things like that. And we kind of left it at that. And there's so much that goes into nutrition, and we're in that point of the year where everybody starts talking about dieting. And, what do you eat? What kind of diet are you on? Well, I do keto. Well, I do paleo. Well, I do Weight Watchers. And that's all great, because as long as you pick the right one, it works, right? So that's why everybody has a good success story, because yes, it totally works. But more than that, if you are looking to change your diet in the sense of not weight loss, okay? Let's say that you have had a lot of issues with eczema, or you've had a lot of issues with just your stomach driving you crazy, or breakouts on your face. That's one for a lot of teenagers. And you're trying to do an elimination diet. That's a whole different kind of thing, right? So today I really want to talk to you about nutrition and how that affects your attention span, and how it can really affect your teenagers' attention span. And one of the things that I think is interesting, at least from my perspective as a person who has had anxiety her entire life, but also who teaches kids who definitely deal with attention issues, and a combination of my own kids having a little bit of attention sometimes, which is normal, of course, but also some anxiety sometimes, how those things all roll together. So that's what I'm hoping you get out of this. If you start questioning whether or not you have attention deficit issues, this is something that could really, really help you in the scheme of things, because obviously there is a certain population that definitely needs those medications that help with attention issues. But if you have mild attention issues, hang tight, because you're about ready to get some really good information today, okay? So first of all, let's talk about ADD or ADHD and what those are. ADD and ADHD are similar, but certainly not the same. You can have an extremely calm, quiet person who sits in their chair, never makes a peep, who has attention issues, okay? Those may not present in the same way as someone who has the H in there, because the H means hyperactivity, okay? So just because your child is sweet, quiet, and can sit in their desk quietly forever doesn't mean they don't have attention issues, all right? The H part just throws in hyperactivity. We're going to talk about it as a lump, okay? So I'm not going to break those two things apart for you any more than I just did. But there are some things that can really aggravate that, whether you have an actual diagnosed case of ADD or ADHD, or whether you just are like, man, I can't concentrate for crap today. And we all have those days, okay? It could be from lack of sleep. It could be from lack of water, and it really, really could be from what you are eating. So of course, make sure you're getting enough water, make sure you're getting enough sleep, and certainly enough exercise. And one of the things that you want to go to from there is to really look at your diet. And of course, the first thing I'm going to tell you that you really need to look at is sugar. So, in my teaching, I have noticed that a lot of my students and a lot of my friends, and even my own kids, and everyone else, we consume so much sugar and so many different kinds of processed foods that a lot of times we think we're eating healthy, and we don't know exactly what's in our food, because we don't read the labels, all right? But the first thing you want to look for is you want to really watch for sugar in all forms. And I have a handout that, sorry, my dogs are trying to like sniff me and steal my coffee. We want to look at sugar in all different forms. So that does include any simple carbohydrate, okay? Candy, of course, right? Honey is sugar. I know it's natural, and I know if you want sweetness, that's going to be so much better for you than like beet sugar. I get it, but honey is sugar, and it will process the same way sugar does. Corn syrup, white flour is sugar. Your body was going to process it the exact same way it does sugar, okay? So if you were eating a lot of white flour products, your body is burning that up as a simple carbohydrate because it treats it like sugar. And white potatoes. Now, if you've been here for like 30 seconds, you know that I am a sweet potato nut. Not sweet potatoes. Their body actually processes those differently, but white potatoes without the skin, because remember that the nutrients that you want and the part of the potato that's actually really, really good for you is the skin. So if you leave the skins on, the potatoes are actually not as bad as if you take them off. Okay, so if you're just eating like mashed potatoes with no skins in them, that's really going to mess with your sugar and with how your body is processing that. These two things right here are interrupting us. Okay, stay out. Sorry. So if you're eating a lot of sugar in any form, agave counts. Okay, agave is going to mess with your blood sugar. If you're eating maple syrup instead, I congratulate you for trying to eat foods that are more natural and not processed. That's great. I'm not saying never ever to eat it because that would be unrealistic. I am saying that it really could wreak havoc on your attention, all right, and your kids' attention. Any way it goes, sugar is one of those things. So other things that you want to look at if you are struggling or if your kids or your teenagers are struggling with being able to pay attention is really food additives, okay? And last week I mentioned that the best thing you can do is really just to eat whole foods. And you might be like, well, I don't even know what that means. Of course, okay? That's because we don't talk about that. We assume if you can eat it, it's a food sometimes. And French fries, is that a whole food? No, I'm sorry. It's not. Yeah, it's a potato that's fried in oil, but it's all the stuff that they put in there to preserve it before they cook it, and then what's in the oil and everything else, all right? A hamburger helper is not a whole food, all right? If you look at that packet of stuff, macaroni and cheese in a box is not a whole food. Here's what's awesome. You can make macaroni and put cheese in it, and it becomes a whole food because you know what's in the macaroni and you know what's in the cheese, all right? That's much better. Okay, pasta is not necessarily a whole food. If you're really brave, you can whip some up yourself. But if you're buying high quality foods, that's gonna help, okay? So eating things where you do not have to try and learn to pronounce what's in the labels. And I always say, look at the, if you read the label of a food and you can't pronounce something, you probably shouldn't eat it either. Okay, so really looking at eliminating any kind of food additives that would go in your food. And that includes artificial colors, especially red and yellow for attention issues. One of my friends in high school, we used to laugh because her mom was like, you are never allowed to drink Hawaiian Punch. Like it was the red dye. And for a long time at Troy, we would get our lunches and they would always send this thing and they called it red juice. And it was basically a giant gallon jug of red Kool-Aid. And our kids were nuts all afternoon. Okay. And a lot of times red and yellow dye, especially. So artificial colors are a big one to watch if you're having attention issues. Aspartame, I'll save this for another day, but I will give you all the reasons in the world not to eat aspartame, especially if you have an anxious kid or a kid who struggles with mental health issues, all right? Somebody remind me in a comment that I need to talk about aspartame sometime in my experience personally with aspartame and how insanely different my life is. MSG is a preservative. It's monosodium glutamate. It's in a lot of Asian foods. So if you're buying like frozen Asian food, frozen stir fry or something like that, check it for MSG. MSG can really disrupt your ability to hold attention, okay? Nitrites are often a meat preservative. You find them in hot dogs, deli meats, things like that, nitrites and nitrates. and sodium benzoate. I'm afraid of anything that says benzo anything. That's just me personally, but sodium benzoate, those are at least, let me count, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additives in particular that you should watch out for. So I'll tell you again so you can write them down. Just basically eat whole foods, like eat a food where you know exactly what's in it, like a banana's a banana, all right? So watch out for artificial colors, especially red and yellow. Aspartame, which I'll talk about in another time if you remind me. MSG, nitrites that you'll find in lunch meats, hot dogs, things like that, and sodium benzoate. Benzo is scary. All benzo, benzate, benzene, benzol. Don't do that, okay? So then we can talk about caffeine, which I love more than I should, but I've cut down so much because caffeine is really a double-edged sword, okay? For people, let me tell you a little story here, okay? I mentioned earlier that I've had anxiety my entire life. It started when I was in elementary school. And I've also loved caffeine my entire life since I was little. My grandma and grandpa always had a thermos out, and they always had coffee in it, and they always had those cheap little sandwich cookies. And there is nothing in the world better than like a really cheap sandwich cookie that you dunk in the coffee because it turns to mush, like pudding coffee cookie stuff. And that was like the best. And I always loved the taste of coffee, and I still love the taste of plain old black coffee. So for people with ADD, the medication that people who struggle with attention issues get has a stimulant in it to make brains focus. Okay? So coffee, in the sense that it can help you focus, that could be true for some people. I know stories about people who literally drink coffee, black tea, Mountain Dew or something just so they can focus. Here's the other side of that. Coffee can also reduce your ability to focus. All right? As somebody who tends to run on the more anxious side, coffee can also cause anxiety if you have too much, which is why I drink a lot of decaf now, because I literally just love the taste of coffee. I try and keep it to like 2.5 cups a day. And I say cups like mugs is what I mean, all right? And the rest of the time it's decaf, where I was drinking it all day long, like sun up to sundown and going to bed and sleeping fine. That's totally different for me, which is also another story for another day. But really paying attention to your caffeine consumption, because small amounts, like a cup of black tea in the morning, might really give your kid just what they need to get them focused, all right? But if they're also a little anxiety prone, it could make it that much worse. And that's kind of trial and error. I certainly wouldn't give your kid like a giant cup of coffee and send them to school for so many reasons. As a teacher, please don't do that, please. Okay, so then, well, great. What can I eat then, right? Because it's not like everything is going to affect that. You have to eat. And I don't want to take everything away from anybody ever, okay? But some foods that are really good for kids with ADD, and I'll explain to you why these are good, proteins. And we hear a lot about protein. And the funny thing about protein is that really, if you look around, there's not a whole lot of people in this country that are struggling from a protein deficiency. Think about that for a minute. We don't lose any sleep over meat. Okay, our problem is vegetables in this country, and sugar. So I wouldn't say, I'm not saying nobody. Most people are not deficient in the protein category. Okay, unless you are a strict vegan, and we can talk about other ways to get protein into your diet with that again at a later date. But high protein foods like beans, cheeses, eggs, meat. These nuts are really good. So part of the reason that these foods are so great, whether you're medicated on ADD or not medicated, is that those foods digest more slowly, okay? So if you have protein in your stomach with your medication, or if you're just trying to keep your blood sugar level to keep your brain focused, having that protein in there is so much more beneficial than having a simple carbohydrate or a sugar in there, because your body has to work to digest it. and it doesn't just disappear after 2 hours. It's not that up and down of the sugar. It's more of a gentle up and down from having that protein, which is going to keep your cortisol levels and everything else in check, which is huge. If you're having attention issues, or if you find out that your attention medication or your kid's attention medication isn't hanging on, try and take away the carbs and give them more protein, because your body metabolizes it more slowly. Okay. The same is true with fats and complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are totally different than simple carbs. Simple carbs are generally white potatoes, white flour, white bread, sugar, or any form of sugar. Okay, yes, honey is yellow and maple syrup is brown and things like that. But they tend to be white, okay? Complex carbs are colorful. And this is the difference between a white potato and a sweet potato. A sweet potato is a complex carb. A white potato is a simple carb. Okay, that's also why if you put that skin on there, it helps bump it up a little bit, because there's a lot more in that skin. Okay, so you want to, for ADD, to help keep things regulated a little bit better, you want to add proteins. You want to add complex carbohydrates, especially if you need a snack at night. Okay, because fiber doesn't have calories in it, so it's not going to add on a bunch of extra sugar or things to do. It's kind of a scrubber, and it scrubs out all of the yuck that's in your gut, but it also keeps you full, okay? So your body has to work to digest it, which makes you tired. You're not getting the sugar bump, and it's going to keep you full at night, okay? So things like, you could go with some fruits if you're looking for something sweet instead of sugar. Maybe apples. Apples have a ton of fiber, so do grapes. Oranges would be a great choice. Pears, grapefruit, any of those. Of course, berries are also really awesome for that. Like I said, especially before bed as a sleep aid. Okay? And then the last thing I want to talk to you about, these are brain boosters, okay? And these are your fats. Your brain thrives on fat, especially omega-3s, all right? You can buy pills with omega-3, and I think supplements are great. If you're not eating the right foods, if you're not eating enough of the right foods, if you have picky eaters, supplements are awesome. But I wouldn't say that you need to depend on them. Now, omega-3s are a little different, because omega-3s a lot of time will come from fish. And I know there are a lot of fish haters out there. I tend to be a fish fan. I love salmon. I love tuna. I love all of that stuff. If that is not your thing, okay, if you are not a fish person, then you need to get a good omega-3 supplement, all right? So omega-3s are great for your brain. They're great for an attentive brain. They're great for a very attentive brain. They're good for your heart. Okay, so omega-3s just in general are going to be something that you're going to want to get into your body at some way. Tuna, salmon, any cold water fish. If you can't handle that, walnuts. The cool thing about a walnut is it really looks like a brain, because it's good for your brain. So nature is kind of awesome, and God does funny things like that. So walnuts are great, Brazil nuts, olive or canola oil are good. And of course, I said a supplement. So we went over the no foods, the yes foods, protein-rich foods, complex carbohydrates, and omega-3s, all right? And another way that I use this in my coaching is if we talk about attention, another thing you can do is you can go back, and I keep saying this because I really, really mean it. That whole decoding yourself thing and finding out how you think best, all right? And I'll use myself as an example. I am an action person and a nurturer person, all right? So when my attention gets off and I'm trying to do too much at once and I can't figure out what I need to do, I direct myself back to my first letter. My first letter is A. I am in action. I think of something I can do. So you might say, well, yeah, but sure, because that's an ADD thing. No, because I'm not hyperactive. I don't have the H, okay? I have so much to do, I can't focus on any of it. I guess I'll do this over here, but I'm not up moving around and bouncing around so much, okay? So I'm more of just undiagnosed, self-diagnosing ADD, right? Let's say for my son, he is a knowledge kid. So if he's losing focus, the best way I can direct him back to what he needs to go in is I need to go to what his first letter is. He's a knowledge kid. So I'm like, Gavin, tell me some stuff that you know. Tell me some facts that you learned. And then boom, he's got them. Because they're in there, I just need to take him back to his focus. All right? If you have a blueprint kid, you can go back and be like, okay, I see that we've lost our focus. What's next on your list? Let's look at our list. Okay? An action person's going to be like, list? I don't need a list. Okay? Your blueprint kid might be like, check it off, next thing on your list. Okay? And your nurturer might just need a big hug and for you to say, you got this. Let's do the next thing. Okay? They're going to need patience. They're going to need understanding. And they're going to need you to say, hey, you know what? You're doing a great job. I know you're really trying. Let's look at the next thing. Let's figure out how this is going to help you. All right. So that's how I incorporate all that into my coaching, between nutrition, because I always am trying to fit nutrition in. I think it is so important and such a vital part of anything related to mental health, and attention issues. Your brains can't function if we feed them junk, right? Our brains, that whole you are what you eat thing, that's so, so true. But also just a lot of mechanisms I can use, with your teenager or with you, because adults too, right? On raising their confidence, making them feel like they have more control, raising their self-esteem so that they know that they can do something, helping them achieve those big goals. So again, thank you guys for tuning in and listening to me today. Thank you for being patient while I let my dogs out and back in, and now apparently back out again. And thank you so much for sharing this with your friends. If you could share this with at least one other person, and maybe hop over and Google 10,000 Swords Coaching on actual Google and leave me a review on there. Leave me a star review. If you've listened to these videos, if you've worked with me, I would really appreciate it if you guys could spend 30 seconds jumping over and giving me a review on Google. So thank you so much, you guys. Have a great Thursday, and we are almost to the weekend. I will talk to you again next week. See ya.